all on this computer. There we go. Let's share screen. I better put computer in case we have video. Okay, guys, so tonight's session, without any delay, is conflict resolution. Okay, so really a cool topic. One of my most favorite topics throughout this whole series is this actual conflict resolution, and what is conflict resolution all about, and how does it actually impact all of us. So one of the things that I've discovered in, as we're going through life, is the fact that most people always focus on the conflict. Very few of us focus on a resolution. And so we should be understanding that conflict is going to happen because people are different. And it is important for us to realize that conflict is healthy. It's how we deal with the conflict that causes the pain. And so if we realize, and Stephen Covey always says, you must look for a win-win situation. And I've always said, no. That's the problem with conflict resolution, is we're looking for a win-win. We actually need to be looking for a win-win-win solution. So that means if Anthony and I are in conflict, he needs to feel as though he's been heard, so he feels that he wins. I need to feel as though I've been heard, which means that I need to feel that I'm winning. But what we have a tendency to forget is that whatever we're having conflict over will reoccur if we don't address that conflict. And so when we learn to address the conflict, then we understand that it's the focusing on the resolution, which means that the conflict shouldn't reoccur. So let's say, for example, we are fighting over the fact that children leave their school bags behind, okay? And so I'm always rescuing them, and I'm letting them, so I'm always rescuing them. So Anthony and I have conflict over the fact that I'm always rescuing my children. Now, that's going to reoccur unless we address the situation, which is the fact that the children are leaving their books behind, okay? So, and then there needs to be a resolve to whatever that is. So that's what I'm talking about with conflict resolution. If your conflict keeps coming up all the time, you need to go back and say, what should we be resolving? Okay, so that's a win-win-win situation with regards to conflict. So in big arguments, both parties tend to lose sight of the truth. And this is an old quote that's been going on for many years. And it is so true that we have a tendency to lose sight of what it is that we stand for. So here's a clip for you. Oh, it didn't go. Let me just see if it'll come back again. I know it's not very clear, but...
What perfect news is that, my dear?
Oh, see, that can really cause conflict.
Okay, cat.
Okay, so I know that was an old clip that I have got in there, and I know I probably could have gone and got yourself a better one. But those are all situations that rise potential conflict all the time. And so what we need to understand is that the more we get to know other people, the wider the room we should actually allow to give them to move. Because once that's extending grace. And so therefore, if we find that we're always in conflict with an individual, you need to discover who they are, what they are. And this is why we did the Lemon leadership styles in the beginning, also your personality profiling. All those kind of things will help reduce the conflict once we know it, because conflict comes from various different places, okay? So there's a big difference between having a disagreement and actually having conflict. So what is the difference between the two? Okay, now your disagreement, if we don't understand what the disagreement is over, the disagreement will then become conflict. So, for example, if both parties, for example, share the same information and they understand exactly where they're standing from, and they both interpret it the same way, and that they've both got the same goals and the same aims and the same values, the likelihood of a disagreement happening is very minimal. Okay, whereas if these areas, like there's two different sets of information, that generally leads to a lot of conflict. Two different ways of interpreting things can lead to a lot of conflict. So if a disagreement is never resolved, it may lead to conflict. And when it hits the conflict stage, mostly we end up with the emotional outbursts. And that's when we really end up fighting with each other. And we have a tendency, when it comes to conflict, the tendency is, in actual fact, to actually really honestly fight with each other. And did my screen go off, guys? Can you still see? I'm pretty sure you can. Yep, I've still got share screen, so it's all good. Okay, so we've got to understand that if we allow disagreements to move into conflict, you could possibly have the dissolving or breakup of relationships. And then, let me just see who is. Okay, thank you, guys. Okay, so this is why we've got to understand that it's about understanding that we need to know where we stand. So, for example, when Anthony and I first got married, we actually had put in place a conflict resolution method, because we're both of us is in a, it sounds funny, I was just going to say stop share for a second. Okay, so both Anthony and I are in the second marriage. So he's got children, I've got children. Okay, we don't have children together, but we both got. And then all the children stayed with us. So we realized that there was a lot of conflict that was, or disagreements that were going on, because remember, he was brought up in a very Afrikaans background, I'm brought up in a very English background. So there's a lot of different ways of parenting, a whole lot of things that were creating a lot of disagreements, which was creating conflict. So right in the very beginning, within the first 2 years of our marriage, we put in place, and we even put it in place with our children, conflict resolution methods. So we knew what steps we had to take when the disagreement was moving into a conflict stage, so that before it got to this massive big conflict, we were focusing on resolutions and we never ended up arguing. Okay, so have we had major disagreements? Yes, but we've never ended up in massive big fights, arguments, conflicts, emotional turmoil. I have a tendency, because of my personality profile, to get very excited about it, but it's not a shouting, screaming. I haven't thrown a cup at Anthony, or have I? I will have to work that one out. Okay, so he shakes his head, no, I haven't. Okay, so guys, so for example, we had one of them was the pillow on the floor method. So going back to that quote, in big arguments, both parties tend to lose sight of the truth. So what we would do is, going back to the information and interpretation, we would actually write on, so it was a pillow on the floor method. So we would sit on the couch side by side, not facing each other, because the moment you face each other, what happens is conflict gets greater. So we sat side by side on a couch, and we would take a pillow, because it was just on the pillow on there, write on a piece of paper exactly what it is that we were going to discuss, that we believed we had a disagreement over. At that point in time, the same as you would do in the workplace, if you were disciplining someone, or if you were having a disciplinary hearing, or a verbal warning, or something like that, or if you are giving, what's the word I want, not abdicating, when you give someone a task to do, delegate. So when you delegate to a person, if you dirty delegate, you'd never explain to them what you actually want. That's dirty delegation. So if you're delegating, you check understanding and clarification of exactly that you're both on the same page. So if we were disagreeing on something, we would say, right, this is it. We would write it down on a piece of paper, and then I would check that what I wrote on the paper is what he also believed. So we, right at the beginning, we made sure that we were sharing the same information, that we were interpreting the same information, okay? And we had the same goal, and that was to have a resolution as opposed to conflict over this. And then, of course, we had our core values that we stuck to. So it's very important to make sure that you actually do have a conflict. And if you've got children, a conflict resolution method in place, because if you've got it in place, there's no need to fight, okay? So for example, if we knew it was escalating, the other party would just say time out. No discussion, don't walk away from each other, just, hey, time out. And then the other one knew immediately they had to stop. So that was the first sign. The second sign was send yourself to the room, regroup, and then come back and say, okay, fine. When can we discuss this? We're not going to discuss it any further now. When are we going to discuss it? We'll both agree, kids in bed, whatever the time, 8 o'clock tonight, we're going to discuss it. When we discussed it, we'd sit side by side, we wrote on a piece of paper, and before we discussed anything, because trust me, I can take you in circles, okay? And we can go for hours and hours and hours. We made sure that we knew what we were talking about. And then isolate the issue. You only talk about what's written on that piece of paper and nothing else. And we've had that in our marriage since, so for the last 23 years, we've been practicing that. And this is why I say it's not about a win-win, as Stephen Covey says. If we must have a win-win. We must have a win-win-win. Okay, so the resolution needs to win as well. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Any questions about that, or you're all good? If you've got any questions, type them in the chat box. All right, so these are the areas that we ended up having conflict about. Okay, if a disagreement, I've said this already, is not resolved, it may lead to more conflict. Okay, and this is what's very important. So the same way as that we had the emotional mastery, when we did the emotional mastery, exactly, we had those 5 steps that we had to follow through. Well, with regards to this one, we can have 4 steps to conflict resolution. And that is stop. When you count to 10, remember you have to breathe, okay? Take a deep breath. Why do you do this? Because you're going to grab hold of your own values, your purpose, your self-image statements, because conflict can come up because sometimes we're putting ourselves in a situation where we're feeling inferior or whatever it might be. So, or else we could be wanting to bully someone. So you've got to get yourself wrapped around your things. Then go away and think. And what are you going to think about? You're going to think about how is best for us to actually resolve this situation. So stop is, you've got to stop in your path, count to 10, take a deep breath. Okay, then you've got to make sure that you grab and you hold on to, and this is why it's so important for us to understand that who we are, what we stand for, what our purpose is, what our values are, what our self-images are. Okay, and when we've got that clear, we will then know that that's what I've got to hold on to and throughout this whole process. Then you can go away and actually start to process what is it that you actually need to think about. How is it that you're going to resolve this? Whose problem is it? Okay, what is the problem? So if I'm disagreeing with Anthony, or if I'm unhappy with him, is it my problem or is it his problem? Because sometimes it's my problem, okay, and I need to deal with it. So if you disagree with me, is it your problem? Okay, is it something that you need to deal with? Okay, is it your issue that's coming up and not my issue? All right, and then when you're going through working out whose problem it is it also our problem? Is it something that, so it's either my problem, it's either his problem, or it's something that we need to work through together. So when you're looking at this and you're asking yourself, whose problem is it? You need to make sure that you try and determine how to resolve the issue. Okay, not the conflict. Stop focusing on the actual conflict. Stop focusing on, but he said this, she said this. If he didn't do this, then I wouldn't do that. Forget about that. Okay, forget about that completely, because that's the conflict. We need to focus and say, before I go into this conversation, I need to have some solutions, something that's going to resolve this particular conflict. And that's what we've got to do. Look at the last thing, and that's to resolve, because ultimately we're going in to say, what is the win-win-win out of here? And then once you've done that, you actually put yourself in a situation where you're calm enough to actually have these conversations despite each other. 100% Keith, exactly. And when you're actually thinking, you know, if you're fighting with your partner, for example, you've got to put down there and well, why do I like this person? You know, so because if you can come into a resolution space, thinking about how to seriously resolve this, that way you're going to be able to resolve it quicker. Okay, because most of the time, it's all about I have to win, I have to have my say, and I don't care what the other person's perspective is. But if you really want to move forward in relationships, we need to ask ourselves, what is the resolution? What's the solution here? So it's all about stop, grab, think, resolve. Okay, stop, grab, think, resolve. And if we can work through that, we'll be able to actually resolve conflicts a lot quicker. Okay. Conflict resolution process, nice and simple. I've gone through this nice and steadily. 1, count to 10. Timeout is a time and a place. When you call your timeout, listen, I'm just going to go to the room for 5 minutes. I'm not going to hang around. I'm here. I'll tell you a story of timeout. Let me just stop sharing. Oh gosh, this is so funny. I don't know why I've just remembered this. Anthony's going to laugh now when I tell you. So the first time Anthony and I, before we actually started putting our resolution, perfect little solution into place, we actually did have a big fight. We had this huge fight about the kids. And it was when his girls had just come to move in with us, and it was like chaos, and we were still trying to find our feet around, and blood is thicker than water. And one of the things that we did actually come out as a resolution was, if his children were angry with my children, they were never allowed to go and speak to him. They had to always come and speak to me, okay? And then I had to be open and listen to them, and vice versa. So they were never allowed to come and complain to us because blood is thicker than water, because that was the resolution of this first fight that we had. Anyway, so we have this huge fight. And then I go to the room and I slam myself in the room, and Anthony, he goes off and to the garage or whatever it was, to the study, and he's out there. And then I realized the house is very quiet, and I thought to myself, why is this house so quiet? So I came out the room thinking maybe everybody had left me, which I wouldn't have blamed them. So then I hear all the kids in the bedroom, and they're talking now, okay? And they're very upset, obviously, because of the circumstances and all that. And I hear my children saying, well, if they could get divorced, then guess what? I think we should actually consider divorcing them, because we do not need parents like this. Well, I was devastated. I was actually horrified. I burst into tears. I went to go and find Anthony, and then I couldn't find him. Then I realized he had gone for a run. Okay, so he had timed out, but he didn't tell me where he was going. So I grabbed the bicycle. So I'm now driving through town, sobbing my heart out on a bicycle, trying to find my husband who's gone for a run, of which I have no clue what direction. Eventually I did find him, because I kind of knew his routes, because we both used to run together. And I found him, and I'm riding the bicycle behind him, and I'm saying, the children want to divorce us, and I don't know what to do. And the more I'm crying, the more he's trying to get away from me, the faster he's running, the faster he gets himself home. And needless to say, we gave corporate punishment to everybody. Okay, so time out is very important. If you're going to time out, it's very important for you to say, listen, just give me a break. We can speak in the next 30 minutes. I can't deal with this right now. I just need to go. And we need to respect that. If you put that in place, you need to respect it. Okay. So I highly recommend these resolutions. They've worked for me. They've worked for my family, and everybody in church and wherever we went never ever believed that we were a blended family, because we put these things in place. Even the children, if they knew that we were crossed, they were allowed to call time out, because this was our resolution process. Okay, so count to 10, give time and place. The second thing is, remember, you're now going to grab onto your values, your core values, and your life purpose, who you are. And really, it's not about grabbing them around the neck, although that's probably what you want to do. Okay, now you need to make sure that you are committed to resolving, and committed to actually resolving the reason why you're having the conflict. Okay, so I know this conflict resolution, you've probably been on lots of courses and that kind of thing, but nobody focuses on actually solving the reason why you actually are having a fight. Then, of course, step number 3 is think about that. Whose problem is it? Is it mine? Is it theirs? Is it yours? And what is the problem? And if you're very clever, what Ant and I used to do, we actually had a book that we would write in, and then I would write in, and we both had our books. In fact, one of the things that we taught our children was every single Sunday we would have a round table. We had a round table discussion, and the reason why we had a round table discussion is because our dining room table was round. Okay, and so every Sunday everybody would bring their conflict, their resolution books to the table, and we would have a meeting. All right, and we would document the meeting. Everybody signed the meeting, they signed the resolution, they signed everything. We have everything on file. In fact, I found the file the other day of all the meetings that we had. And you know what, each week a different person chaired the meeting. And the reason we allowed them to do that is because we taught them how to chair a meeting. We taught them how to build their self-confidence. We taught them how to actually communicate. The little one, who was 8 at the time, no, she was now 10 at the time. That means we had a 10, 11, 12, and 13-year-old, and then us. And we allowed them to chair. And if they were in charge, they had to call the meeting. They had to tell the person to stop talking. They were the one that everything that you would do if you were chairing a meeting. And a valuable skill that they learned when they went into the workplace, because a lot of people don't know how to chair meetings. So that's how we were. But we all came with our resolution books, and we would write down what we were angry about for the week and what we were upset about for the week. And so we would discuss them, and then we would discuss one issue at a time. Please, one issue at a time is always what you do. Okay, all right, so think about whose problem it is, yours, mine, or theirs. And then, of course, the last thing that you've got to do is make sure that you resolve. You've got to look for that win-win situation where you feel that you've been heard, the other person feels that they've been heard, but please don't forget about the third win, which means that you have to have resolved the conflict. Okay, so anybody else want to comment on that, say anything about that, or type in anything, or you're all good? Okay. Okay, great. So,
sorry, Michelle.
Yes.
It is, of course, the win-win-win, of course, only gets into play when two will play the game.
Absolutely.
Because if only one plays a game, then you ain't got no game.
Absolutely, and that's why you don't fight, and that's why it's just not worth the disagreement. It's not worth the argument if two people are not going to come into that agreement, and that's why you've got to say, look here. And you know what we discovered is that when you set these kind of things into motion, you never do it when you're angry. You always do it and say, everybody's in a good mood, family's in a good mood, and say, okay, guys, listen, the next time we have a disagreement and a fight, what do you think? How do you think we should handle it? And then somebody would say, well, look, you know, Mom, you just go on and on and on at me. Can I not just go to my room and we just think about this until we calm down, and then we can talk about it? Is that okay? And then that's where the timeout came in. But time has to have timeout is a time and place, and that's when we put that one into place. Because I mean, I can go on at you, okay, and they knew that, and then so I have to respect that. And then when we came to an agreement on that, then when the our children were even allowed to appeal. Okay, I mean, everything that you did in the workplace, we ran in our household. Okay, we had appeal procedures, we had, you name it, our house ran like a company. And that's why we had very little conflict, because everybody knew where they stood, what their roles and responsibilities were, what the consequences to actions were, and you know, the kids to this day, you know, probably said they used the nickname Anthony Hitler and me the Wicked Witch. But you know what? Our household ran like clockwork. We didn't have fights. We didn't have teenagers screaming at each other. We had none of that ever, because it wasn't allowed. And we agreed to these things. And so if somebody stepped out of line, we just said to them, we didn't say, you. We just said, what rule are you, what? No, we didn't have rules, we had values. So what value are you breaking right now? And then we had the values written on the wall. And the number one value was, because we had an upstairs, downstairs, no one shouts to the other one from the bottom of the steps to the top of the steps. You just don't do that. And we all knew that value number 11 was you do not shout at another person. If you want to speak to them, you get up, you have a courtesy to walk to them and talk to them. And so we had all these things in place, and none of our kids, it wasn't a problem. So again, you need to have these agreements done when people are in a good mood. Never try to put these agreements in place when people are in a bad mood. So if you feel that you're having a lot of fights with your partner, it's about sitting down and saying, okay, look, I apologize for fighting, and I'm the first one to play. So what I suggest that I'm going to do, it's always that I'm wrong. And what I suggest you do is that the next time we have a disagreement, I'm going to call a timeout. Is that okay? What do you think a timeout should look like? And then you discuss what a timeout. So well, next time we disagree, let's try that. And that's how we started coming up with all of these things. And it's so important to put them in place, especially if you've got children growing up in the household, and, conflict, if you're finding that you're getting scratchy with each other, just put stuff in place. That's what you would do in the workplace, so why not do it at home? We did a lot of things in our house. Awesome. Thanks, Vilma. Cool. Okay, so I hope you're finding some value out of this. I hope you finding something good. Awesome. Great. Okay, so always remember that when you are in conversation, remember to compliment people. Remember to please don't belittle. Okay, you don't want to say nasty things, because words you can't take back. Okay. Be open to the communication, look for that triple win situation, and then appreciate other people. Thank them for the conversation. Thank them for resolving conflict. Okay. All right. When the other person is not prepared. Okay. All right. So what we're going to understand is that there's two sides to every story, and there's going to be a lack of cooperation, because not everybody gets along. And you know what? Sometimes we just need to say that that's okay. If it's your partner that you're not getting on with, or you're having a lack of cooperation, what we need to do is just remember why you actually started the relationship together. Why did you start these things? And it is important to, when having these conversations, just understand that personalities are different. Okay. Previous screen, sure thing. Is it that one? Awesome, Keith, thanks. Great stuff. Okay, guys. So please watch reoccurring patterns. Very important for us to have those reoccurring patterns. Understand that not everybody's going to see your side. Not everybody's going to have that magic cooperation, and not everybody's going to get along. And that's okay. All right. Just make sure that you're making steps forward, and that you understand that you actually really want to resolve that conflict that is at play. And nothing is better than I am sorry. Okay, the hardest words to say, but actually it's not that difficult to actually say, look here, I'm really sorry. Okay, try practice it sometime. But there's a big difference between saying I am sorry and saying, I am sorry, would you please forgive me for? And the reason being is because if you're going to say to someone, I'm sorry, we can always say, I'm sorry, whatever, I'm sorry. And that's actually just abdicating, and you don't mean it at all. Okay, 100% key. But if you say, so if I go to Ed and say, look, I'm really, really sorry, please would you forgive me for shouting at you, for swearing at you, for telling you you're a stupid idiot, okay? Then I'm being very specific. He knows exactly what he needs to accept my apology for, okay? But he could be angry with me for something else, okay? And I could have sworn at him, all right? And then I go to him and I say, look, I'm really, really, really sorry that I shouted at you. And he's like, no, that's not actually why I'm cross with you. You can shout all you want. It's the fact that you swore at me. Okay, so I need it, because he needs to know exactly what I am, what he can release me from, okay, or forgive me from. So unforgiveness, as we've all heard it before, is when you drink the poison and hope the other person is going to die. So we need to understand that it is all about meaning it being genuine with each other. And I just thought I'd share, when we're going through this session on relationships, the biggest thing is conflict is good, okay? We should never shy away from conflict, because conflict is good. It's how we resolve the conflict that's the problem, okay? Conflict is supposed to be there because we ought to have different types of personalities, we have different types of backgrounds, we're raised differently, we see things, we have different perspectives, and that's okay. That's very healthy, because we mustn't all be the same. But what is the problem is how we resolve it. So that's me for tonight. I hope you learned something. If you could please do me a big favor, and I just want to tell that person I can't talk to them right now. Just give me, type in there, what's one thing that you got out as a reminder, because you obviously done all conflict resolutions before, something that you're reminded, aha, that you got from this. If you could type in or just voice and let us know what it is that you got out of the session.
You're so short tonight, only half hour.
Only half hour, but you guys are going to talk now. So
I think this topic comes at the right time.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and this is going to teach us character as to how we're going to go forward, and push through, and show togetherness.
Yes.
Be on the same page.
Yes. Awesome.
And march forward. I still got hope that there are going to be some things that are going to come back to what they were.
Absolutely awesome. Thanks, Wilma. And I agree, Juanita, it's always good to just refresh, isn't it? It's stuff we know. We've all done conflict resolution courses at work and in the work environment and at school and all those kind of things. And it is nice to just recap, okay? Sonette, yes, love the time out, and we'll use this more. Absolutely. And we were just, sometimes you're so angry, Ant would just do this to me, and then I know I've pushed him too far, okay? But just do it nicely. It's important to resolve the conflict. Absolutely, Derek and Carla, absolutely correct. Tend to fall into bad habits, so a refresh is great. Yeah, we do have a tendency to fall into bad habits very quickly. Anybody else, please? What else did you get from this? Sylvia, time out and take a deep breath. Absolutely. Okay, just take that deep breath. Never go to bed angry with another. So true, Juanita. So true. And that bring me to that statement that Juanita's just put here. Never go to bed angry with one another. So if, for those of you that are believers here, and you go with that scripture, that actually says never let the sun go down on your anger, okay? It doesn't mean you have to resolve the conflict before you go to sleep. Please understand that, okay? It does not mean that before you go to bed, before you actually go to sleep, that you actually have to resolve that conflict. Remember, make peace with each other and the reason why you're actually connecting with each other, and then set a time and a date that is reasonable, like in the daytime, not to resolve conflict at 10 o'clock at night and you're going to go to 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so just set the time and place for that elsewhere. Okay, yes, Keith.
Just what you've said now too. I've always believed that never go to bed angry with each other, and you might never wake up the next morning, and also just think before you ink, before you talk.
Exactly.
Think what you're going to say to someone.
100%. Awesome, Keith. That's brilliant. So yeah, it is, but yeah, just if you still have to resolve the conflict, set a date and time. You would in the workplace, so respect the people that you're living with to do the same thing. Marianne, I would love to have an example of how you guys sit around the table. Sounds like such a good idea, but don't know exactly how that was done. So, Marianne, very simple. If, for example, you had a board meeting, so we said that after church on a Sunday, we would all have lunch, we would clear the table away, and then everybody at 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, before we would all go lie down for Sunday, we would then have a discussion, okay? And everybody, what they had to do is they all had a book, okay, a journal, and they had to write in the journal. They were not allowed to fight we were not allowed to fight with each other during the week, okay? And there was no children were allowed to say anything nasty to each other or anything. They had to be civil all the time. But what they could do is they could go and write in their journal what they were angry about that somebody else did. And they were allowed to talk about that in front of everybody at the meeting, okay? So we would start the meeting, and let's say, for example, my son was the one he was the chairman of that particular meeting. Then he would say, okay, guys, today's date, and he would write it on the foolscap piece of paper and say, this is our meeting. And then everybody's names were there, and he would say, Mom, how many points do you have to talk about today? And I would say, I've got 2. Dad, how many have you got? He's got 3. Rochelle, how many have you got? She's got 10. Tabby, how many have you got? She's got 3. And Moshe, how many have you got? I've got 5. And he'd say, well, I've got 6. Okay, great. Now, everybody, please, would you tell us what your points are? We're not going to discuss them. We're just going to see what the points are, because we were looking for a common point that we could discuss. Okay, and then everybody would just read their points as we would go around. And then we found that the common point was Mom was being an absolute horrible mom the whole week. She was shouting at us, and she was just a horrible mom. Okay, let's talk about that. All right. And then we'd go around, and then they would say, yeah, on Monday when this happened, Mom shouted at me because I left my books behind. And then we'd all discuss this. Then I would have to apologize to them, or have the discussion with them and explain what my situation was. I'd have to rectify my attitude if I was the one that was out of line, or if we found that they were all out of line because they were not leaving school books behind or not getting ready for school or whatever it might be. Then we had to address the school routine. And so that's actually how we handled it. And then we would stick to one topic. It wasn't like, oh, Peter said this, and then Tammy said this. None of those discussions were done. Only that one topic. So we'd say, Mom is out of hand. Let's talk about that. So, right. And then that's what we would talk about. So it was such a nice, it worked every single week. We only allowed the meeting to go for an hour. And so only allowed to go for an hour. So if there was more talkers, they would be tabled for next time. Okay, so, or the person had an opportunity to say, no, it's okay, I'm not going to talk about, I don't know what's happening here with my, oh, it's Keith sending through things on
Oh, it's me, sorry.
And it's just coming through, but it shouldn't be coming through because I've actually closed the thing down. Okay, but it doesn't matter. Okay, thanks, Keith, for doing that. So yes, and then we would table it, or they had an option just to say, no, it's fine, that I'm happy with that. Okay, so that's exactly how we do it. And how do you suggest we incorporate small kids, 6 to 4 years old, keeping in mind they speak like adults and reason? Exactly, 100%. They must have their say at the table. They, you know, and the 4-year-old, for example, who can't write, I would say they must have their own book. All right, so we did this with my niece. And they had their own book, and then they had to go and tell someone they want to write in that book. Okay, so then they would say whatever the story is, and then you could read that out at the table, and then you'd have a discussion. But the secret to the success of the round table is everybody is allowed to be open, honest, truthful, and nobody must take offense. Okay, because that's their perspective. Nobody's allowed to shout, and nobody's allowed to swear. Okay, so those were the things, but whatever was said was, because if it was written down because they want to be nasty, before it gets to the round table, they will take it off. But then they don't fight with their sibling about it. They're not allowed to. Then we would reward them at the end of the week as well, for not fighting with the siblings. So we had a reward chart on the table with stars. I did this. I had a rewards and a star chart. If you were in my house and you were 18 years old, you had a star chart. Okay, because that's how you got your pocket money, and that's how you got your pocket money deducted as well. All right, so we had star charts like right up until the kids were 18 years old. And they always said, we'll never have star charts in our house, ever, ever, ever. Well, guess what? They actually do have star charts in their houses now because it works. Okay, people, what's that saying? Babies cry for it and grown people die for it, and that's recognition. So if you see a bad or a star coming off, or you're going to be minus 10 cents or whatever it is, trust me, you start behaving, and it works very quickly. So it took us probably about 3 weeks to get everything in circle nicely till it was clockwork, till everybody was used to, because remember, it takes 21 days to break a habit. So it took us about 3 weeks for us to you know, get it going. But we had to be consistent. It was 2 o'clock every Sunday. We had our round table. If we were on holiday, we just sat in the lounge wherever we were. We went, if we were at my mom's place, if we were at Anthony's mom's place, if we were on holiday, on timeshare, doesn't matter what it was, we would have our Sunday afternoon round table, always. Discussions. We never had bickering in the cars. We never had anything because we just like were ruthless and deducting. Okay, so yeah, try it. It really works. It's and we call it the round table. So if you've got a square table, you can call it the square table. If you've got an oblong table, you can call it the oblong table meeting. Okay, awesome, guys. Nice, Marine. Thank you so much for that question. Anybody else like to share what they got out of today? All good? Super. Okay, see, Vilma, I told you we'd be going all the way to 1:30. Okay, great. Anthony wants to say something. Sorry? Pardon? Anthony said I was telling you we got DVDs on all this. I never think to tell you guys. So we've got DVDs on. Gosh, we've got 9 DVDs. Give me the titles: How to Manage Your Anger, How to Resolve Conflict, How to Differences in Relationships, which is your DISC profiling, How to Communicate Effectively, the 5 Love Languages, How to Build Trust in Relationships, How to Build Intimacy in Relationships. That's the How to series. And then we've got a DVD series called Breakthrough Steps to Step Parenting. And then I have actually got DVDs on how to get your mom a degree and dad, and he's got how to get your dad degree. So I'm sorry, we never ever told you we've got all these DVDs that we sell to everybody else except you guys.
You see, now we've got our own in-house university. Who needs Element U?
I forgot. I keep on forgetting we've got all those DVDs. I'll post them to. I don't want to advertise on the group. I'll see anyone who's interested. Then we'll let you know. Just ask me, and I'll give you the titles.
I'm interested. Always.
I forgot about that. Yes, but listen, these were made in 2004, I think. So I think I've grown a little bit since then. You'll see what I look like in 2004. Please post on the group, you won't mind. Okay, thanks, Marine. I will do that. Yeah, Juanita, you want to say something?
No. I just, relationships, but any relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, a work relationship, or whatever, it always needs work.
Yeah,
you have to work at it all the time.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
That's how Anthony always asks when he starts a marriage seminar, how do you spell marriage? And everybody tells you M-A-R-I. He says, no, it's W-O-R-K.
Right.
Awesome, guys. Okay, Marine, I will post them. I've got to go and find the DVD covers, and I'll send you them all. I'll send you the back and what they're all about. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Take care. Have an awesome week. And that was nice. Next week, we're going to talk about assertion and the difference between aggression and assertion. Okay. It's what I need for me. That's why I'm doing it now. Because right now I'm on the aggressive side, I'm on the aggressive side, not the assertive side. Bless you guys. Cheers, man. Take care. Love you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.